Governor John Hickenlooper is at odds with Republican State Senate President Bill Cadman over the complexities of the hospital provider fee battle. Cadman claims a memo from Legislative Legal Services affirms that the governor's proposal is unconstitutional. However, Hickenlooper refutes that the Attorney General's office has already commented that nothing in TABOR prohibits the proposal. Mike, the whole hospital provider fee thing is pretty complicated. I consider myself someone who at least keeps up with politics the best I can, and it confuses the heck out of me. So I don't want to get into too much of the details there. But when it comes to fighting, you get the Senate president on one side and the governor on one side. One says it's illegal, one says it's not legal. How bitter is that fight going to get?
It'll be interesting to see how bitter it gets to and whether or not there's something introduced to try and meet in the middle to try and get around this. But let's just assume for a minute that, let's say for the sake of argument, that it is constitutional. It is still a very cynical shell game going on to try and bust TABOR and to basically deny TABOR refunds to people moving forward long-term into the future. The hospital provider fee is really a tax. The federal government even calls this a tax when they approved Colorado's participation in this. It was disingenuously called a fee to get around having to have people vote on it. You are taxing sick people in the hospital and then not allowing them to see that tax on their bill to shift money to another account to bring in federal matching funds to now subsidized care for healthy people through our Medicaid expansion, and then sending the money back over to the hospital. So if anyone else was doing this, we would probably call it some kind of Ponzi scheme, or they would be under some kind of criminal indictment for doing this in the private sector. So clearly this is a tax. And clearly what they want to do is simply get around simply asking the voters, can we keep this money? Do you approve of this? So this has all been one big end run around the Taxpayer Bill of Rights. And I applaud Senator Cadman for standing firm, because he's been under an immense amount of pressure by what we call the Takings Coalition, the people who want to take this money, move it out from under the TABOR limitations to spend on things. I think that the Democrats were wrong to pass this as a fee years ago. It's clearly a tax, should have been put to a vote of the people, and should be repealed, frankly.
Eric, as a political issue, is it more valuable for Governor Hickenlooper to see this enacted and that he kind of wins this issue, or is it more valuable for him to lose on this one and for it to become kind of a martyred example of the problems with TABOR, where he can fight a bigger battle?
It's a good question, Dominic. There are a whole lot of moving parts here, and this is one substantial moving part, but it's not the only one. And the bigger ones are the Better Colorado campaign that is coming up to de-taborize the state, or at least to basically do a permanent referendum C, de-Bruce the state through a permanent referendum C, which is going to be one of the battle royales in all likelihood of this coming fall. I think John Hickenlooper really sees the hospital provider fee not as a political issue, but as a way to leverage $750 million or something to use for highways, to use for higher education, to use for X, Y, and Z without having to refund that to taxpayers. It has become a game of political gotcha between the Senate Republicans that run that Senate by an 18-17 split, and the governor and other Democrats. And without even opining on where the equities lie, although there was a clear opinion the other day from Legislative Legal Services that basically supported the Republican position here, the Republicans think they have a trump card here in political terms. And there is a lot of talk I'm hearing these days of the Republicans, probably they can't get it through the legislature as a referred measure, but maybe even as an initiated measure, to take this to the voters for clarification. And if they win, well, fine, then TABOR has been reinforced. And if they lose, that's fine too. They at least have made the case and required the Democrats to adhere to their interpretation of TABOR. So this is one of many political games that is going to get played out over the coming 4 months of the legislative session. I can't tell you how it's going to, what the upshot of it's going to be.
Natasha, TABOR's been a point of contention for the legislature since it was passed way back in '92, so that's nothing new. But does this particular fight add anything new to the argument?
Well, if anything, it's turning Tabor into like one of those words you can't say on television, like the old Carlin sketch, right?
It will be on the show.
And
Absolutely.
I think that is the policy. I think that there's slowly, part of the PR agenda is to just take away people's trust and respect in what this is. And of course, I think we are going to see it on the ballot sooner rather than later. What I think is interesting about this, though, is that how quickly things change. When they first looked at putting this into place, the economic forecast in Colorado was dismal. We were not going to be looking at the situation that we are today, which is great economic forecast. I mean, take a look outside in downtown Denver and look at the cranes in the sky. Things are completely different. And that's part of the reason why we have to constantly tinker with our system. Whether you like Tabor or not, that forces us to constantly tinker with our system and look at what our budget priorities are. I don't want to call it a crisis yet, because I think we use that word maybe too often, but the budgetary concerns that are happening in the state and what we have to pay for and what we will not be able to pay for is going to be a big topic at this table and up at the Capitol as well this year.
Patty, even if the program is legal, if that's a full decision that does come out that way, it still has to go through the legislature to happen. Does Governor Hickenlooper have the political capital to make that work?
Well, he might. He's got to decide what political capital he wants to spend. Now, we have to remember, this wasn't his idea. This one dates back to Ritter. So it was a way, when the economy was going to hell, to just try to save, to capture some of the money that was coming in. You know, you have to think about Tabor and this city. Let me use this beautiful coffee cup. So all the money that's coming into the state, you know, it's going into the coffee cup, and Tabor has a limit on how much can come in. The hospital provider fee is basically on top of that. So what they're hoping to do is just use the fee, have a little spigot and let it out and use it for the things that Colorado would really like to pay for right now, like roads, which they can't do under the current budget with the Tabor limitations. And they thought they had a deal, the Democrats, and especially Hickenlooper, thought they had a deal with the Republicans that if the money went to transportation, went to fixing all those potholes, went to fixing those highways that no one's come up with a way to fix otherwise, then maybe the fee would pass. We'll see if people are upset enough about the roads to make it work and push it through in this legislative session, but there are a lot of other sticky issues that Hickenlooper's going to have to use his political capital on too.